You've been building a foundation for how CyrusOne operates, and now you're moving into this scaling phase. When we're talking about that foundation, what does that mean to you in the context of a global data center?
As far as building a foundation goes, it comes down to how do we operate as one? We think about all the different data centers we have. So the question is, how do you make it so that in our case, all 55 data centers are one data center? The customer experience at NBA side is going to be the same as it is at Phoenix, right? It's not just luck of the draw. So I think building the foundation is essentially allowing the company to execute at a regional or global scale. So can we drive consistent operations across the board?
Today's guest is Eli Henson, Director of Operations Engineering at CyrusOne, where he leads teams of engineering experts to drive operational excellence across the company's global data center portfolio. Before joining CyrusOne, he served in the U.S. Marine Corps, spent 3 years at Siemens, and later worked at Microsoft.
You mentioned that your team's going to have 3 different functions in it. Why that structure? Why those 3 different components?
New capacity and readiness, they find the gremlins. My core team deals with those gremlins, and then my reliability engineering team helps reduce the overall number of gremlins that come back.
Now, your team is growing, and you said you're looking for builders, not patchers.
Somebody who classifies as a patcher, they're going to deal with problems as they come. And I look at that builder as taking that to a next level of looking at the overall system or what the potential systemic gaps are that are causing those things to happen and trying to do something about it.
What does success look like for the CyrusOne operations engineering team over the next 12 to 18 months? And what has to go right during that time to get to that point of scaling?
I think a major milestone or a major accomplishment will be getting.
Paul Koetke is the founder of Koetke Consulting. He helps data center companies build the operational infrastructure to meet exponentially growing capacity demands.
Welcome to the Built to Scale podcast. My name is Paul Koetke, and this is a podcast where I interview leaders across the data center industry. Today, we're here with Eli Henson, who has a fantastic career path and is currently at CyrusOne as the Director of Operations Engineering. He started in the U.S. Marine Corps, spent 3 years at Siemens, worked over to Microsoft, and is now at CyrusOne, and his role is ensuring that all the data centers stay up and running and keep operational. Eli, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Paul. Happy to be here.
I am as well, too. So tell me a little bit about how you got to CyrusOne as the Director of Operations Engineering. You've had quite an impressive career path. What ties all this together, and how does that shape the way that you lead your team today?
Yeah. How did I choose my career? Well, I mean, I guess I'll start with it's been somewhat accidental, if I really am brutally honest here, and that I didn't really have a plan when I started, other than just to have fun and do stuff. So kind of reflecting on this a little bit, I'm an engineer by background, we'll just say by temperament. So I like to solve problems that are complex and interesting. I also tend to have at least I found it early on that I have a drawn to leadership for whatever reason. I haven't quite unpacked why that is, where that comes from, but it interests me as an area, and I enjoy the burden of responsibility. And so tying that in with, I think, just a general sense of like, I want to be value add to society in some way. And I think you marry all those 3 things together, and that's where I kind of see the through line in all the roles that I've ended up taking and the choices I've made. So like being an officer of Marines, that's kind of where I learned the true servant leadership model. And then in each one of my roles, it's been some combination of technical leadership function. So communications in the core, Siemens with field engineering and doing EPMS, Microsoft in varying levels of site ownership and leadership and scope. And then finally to CyrusOne, where I get to do what I do every day. So
I love it. And, I hear this from a lot of different people within the data center industry. I find that anecdotally, it has a very strong veteran presence, and something about having served in the military seems to set people up from a mindset or capability standpoint to work in these mission critical environments and take those skill sets and decision-making and leadership attributes and apply that to the data center world really, really well. And so that's really interesting to see your perspective on where that's formed you and brought you to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, I think that's spot on. I mean, as a hiring manager, I tend to gravitate towards folks that have, a prior service background. I think it lends itself to, it just forces you to grow up fast, like for lack of a better term, right? Like you come out of school at 17 and a half, 18, or out of college, in my case, at 22, you know nothing about the world. So that puts you into an environment where you're drinking from the fire hose immediately, and you just,
An
you gotta get
accelerated
after it.
learning
So
path.
yeah, accelerate. Exactly. So you get a lot of experience in a condensed platform with an outsized amount of responsibility put on your shoulders. And it turns people out with some real interesting experience paths that I think, especially in the mission critical environment, you tend to get it more. Like you understand the stakes a little bit better. And even if it's not the same as when you were in the military in whatever fashion that was, you understand like what you're playing with. So
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. And in terms of what you're building here as a platform, you mentioned previously that you've been building a foundation for how CyrusOne operates, and now you're moving into this scaling phase. When we're talking about that foundation, what does that mean to you in the context of a global data center? And what are the changes that you're anticipating here as you shift from that foundational building stage and scaling up globally?
I think I tend to refer back to terms that I learned in the course. So if I say something that you don't quite get, please call me on it, and I'll try to explain. Like, as far as building a foundation goes, at scale or moving to scale, it comes down to like, how do we operate as one? So if you think about all the different data centers we have, this is Microsoft, CyrusOne, whatever, choose your company, insert this as a relative answer. Like, you've got a bunch of individual sites. Those sites more or less are going to staff the people they need to operate, right? So the question is, how do you make it so that way in our case, all 55 data centers are one data center, right? So the customer experience,
cohesive platform across the entire organization.
Yeah. So like the customer experience at an NBA site is going to be the same as it is at Phoenix, right? It's not just luck of the draw. So I think building the foundation is essentially allowing the company to execute at a regional or global scale, right? So can we drive consistent operations across the board? That's what I see as building the foundation. As far as scale goes, to me, that means that we're executing on that, right? So building the foundation is establishing all those processes and procedures you need to do that. And then scale is you're actually doing it.
Now, it's easy to say, hey, we're going to set this foundation or this standard template for how processes are going to operate, and we can't deviate from that. I mean, that's great in a perfect world when everything is exactly the same. However, we don't live in a perfect world. How do you take on this challenge of standardization and scalability when it comes to working in different markets that have different regulatory environments, have different requirements around them, where you need to adapt to a certain degree, but also you need to maintain that standardization? How do you flex but not break that scalability foundation?
Yeah. And this has been my life for the last 5-6 years. It's like how to crack that nut, right?
It's not an easy one.
No, I mean, otherwise I'd be retired or something, have a book on Amazon about it. But it's, I think at least the way I've tried to approach it is change the mindset from like, we're not trying to establish central control and governance, right? And rule with an iron fist. Like, what we're really trying to do is we've given these site leaders, whether it's a facility manager, senior tech, chief, like at the ground, we've given them an almost impossible task of maintaining their facility and keeping it up for our customers. So to me, I look at this like centralization and standards, repositories, and policies and whatnot as this is a tool. It should be a tool in their tool bag to do that job better or more efficiently or more effectively, right? So it can't be a one size fits all. We all know this, that it has to be here's the ground rules to operate from so that you can execute. Now, where do you need to deviate from that? Let us know, right? So I think just having a healthy exception process, a healthy deviation process, that way you can at least know where folks are going around whatever it is that you've set in place. Evangelize the why behind what all these requirements are. Like, we shouldn't just be coming up with things for the sake of having a requirement. There should be a reason behind it.
Yeah,
and then
people need to believe in the mission too.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then it can't be a small group of people sitting in an ivory tower shouting out edicts. Like, to me, there's a very healthy revision process that's in place where it's essentially like a ground up development of whatever these requirements are, right? So you have to develop from the ground, right? So you get the field perspective of what's your problem, like how do we solve it, and then put it together and socialize it for feedback and input.
Yep. So your job is really to listen to the field, pull that information together, synthesize it, and then push it back out so you can cross-pollinate the best practices across the entire organization, standardize it. And, the rising tide lifts all ships that way.
Exactly. And that also gives leadership a chance to look at like this single line, whatever it is, and see what they're seeing out in the world, whether that's dealing with customers or market trends or whatever, and say, we need to change this slightly. And then that impacts everybody in a consistent way. So I see it going kind of both ways there.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So you've got a good process that's coming into place here, and now you're also building out your team. You mentioned that your team's going to have 3 different functions in it. So new capacity and readiness, reliability engineering, and central operations resilience and engineering. Why that structure? Why those 3 different components? And how do those parts of the teams interact with each other? And what does each part do that the others don't?
Yeah, this is occupied a lot of my brain space lately, especially as I'm trying to hire people on to fill these roles. And I'll start with the simple, somewhat cheeky answer in that new capacity and readiness, they find the gremlins. My core team deals with those gremlins, and then my reliability engineering team helps reduce the overall number of gremlins that come back, right? So if you keep that simplified view, that's kind of where they're at. But maybe to get more in depth, new capacity and readiness, it's in the name. This is going to be how we actually transition new capacity into operations, both from a standpoint of, is the operations team ready to accept the capacity, and is the capacity itself in such a state where it's not going to introduce unnecessary risk to our customers when we go live.
And where does this team come in from a new data center build perspective? Are you coming into an empty shell and this team is going in and fitting it out?
This would probably be getting into the space around the time we start doing the last L3, starting into L4 commissioning. So construction's building it, commissioning's doing their thing. Site operations team should be staffed up at that point. And now we're getting in, we're starting to do punch list walks, just checking out the facility, writing our procedures, doing all of those initial startup checklists from the operations side of the house. So that's where they come in.
So that's where it starts. And then you carry it all the way through the rest of the life cycle and maintain it onward. Try and get that vicious circle of gremlins popping up to just reduce, and keep going for smooth operations.
Yeah. That's the dream.
Yep. The dream.
Yeah.
When you are going through and finding, I love the word gremlins. It's such a great descriptor. When you're going through and finding these issues that come up, these gremlins, you're pulling in data and then doing root cause analysis on it. In your experience, where do most operations teams break down between collecting the data and actually converting that into consistent operational change that can actually have an impact on how these sites are running?
That is an interesting one. Honestly, I think the failure is in the starting is what I'm seeing a lot of. And I'll expand on that a little bit. So we're generating huge amounts of data, right? Through work orders, telemetry systems, you name it. There's loads of ones and zeros out there being made on a minute by minute basis. What I've seen kill initiatives dead in the water in the past is the line comes up, well, we don't trust the data because the data quality is bad. And so then that leads to, okay, well, if the data quality is bad, we can't do this, we can't change that. And then that leads to not actually looking at the data. And if we're not looking at the data, then the data quality continues to be in the state that it's in. So I see a lot of initiatives like this fail just on starting. You have to accept at some point that your base data set is not great, and you just got to start looking at it to make it better. I don't know if that's your ask or not, but
give us some example of data that isn't trustworthy or that isn't high enough quality.
The historical example is definitely in work orders, right? So as you do preventive maintenance work orders, if you find an issue, how do you track that issue, right? Is that its own separate work order where that's like a break, fix, or corrective maintenance work order? Then how do you categorize that so you know what the failure code is? And I think that structure is what comes into question a lot, is like, what's the health of our CMS data from a quality perspective?
Yeah.
Correspondingly, we'll have telemetry systems where the appropriate points that we need to monitor and want to monitor and trend are just not set up that way. So you only get like a 2-week snapshot, like a rolling 2-week, as opposed to a year or 3. So you can really see the health of that equipment over time. That's another like prime example.
I really like the example on the work orders because that's a secondary thought at the time of the work order. It's just, hey, we got to go out, we got to fix this, just get it done. No one at that time is consciously thinking, hey, in 2 or 3 years from now, we're going to want to be able to review this and have a standardized set of data that we can pull from. It's just get the work order done, close it out. I've got 10 more of these that are coming my way. after this one. So
Yeah, this is just paperwork for me at the ground level, essentially. So
yeah. Do you think there's a way of using AI in here to help clean up some of that data? I know this has been really big for a lot of companies, being able to go through and just say, hey, we have awful data here. Go back and analyze it and just upload all of those different work orders and be able to synthesize something out of it.
the short answer is yes, with an SH. I think, and my team started to dabble into this a little bit of like starting to create some agents and whatnot in Copilot and ChatGPT to upload data sets and just see what it comes out as. And I think there's going to be more of that happening as I build out the rest of the team, especially with some of the roles I have. It's been kind of solely focused on being able to do that. So yes, I would not want to put in place something where an AI agent or whatnot like could fix data. I'd rather have it just flag it, and then the human can go and make a judgment call. I've been part of initiatives in the past where we did a similar thing, just minus the AI part of it, but we would just sit down as a group of 3 or 4 relevant SMEs in the area and just start looking at like incident report after incident report and be like, and then start tagging things and adding on things like that. And I think there's some value in doing some tests there, not just in helping to categorize, the sins of the past, but helping to flesh out what we would need to change from a governance standpoint going forward, right? Of like, okay, we're seeing this trend in the past. How do we then make it more trustworthy going forward? Like improved root cause codes or spot checking QA, QC things, something like that. So yes, I think there's definitely space to get in there. And I think that's going to be how we are able to do a little bit more with less, as the company always wants us to do, whatever company it happens to be.
I think that's a really important part that I've seen a lot of, is being able to look at that past historical data and, like you mentioned, pulling out better root cause codes so that you can accurately in the future say, hey, this is what we've seen in the past. These are the main categories that stuff is falling into. And if we don't have a category system that matches that, we need to update it. We need to change it,
right,
and bring that up to speed. But, it's always a constant evolution too. You got to go back every couple of years and recheck the data again, maybe add new category codes or merge other ones and change it to make sure that things are staying relevant and staying up to date there.
Yeah, I think what I'm most excited about in that area is just allowing my engineers to be more engineering, in the sense of like they're doing less data mining and less analytics and more assessments and looking at a more polished product that they can have better insights in, and being, how do I say it? Like just being more of an engineer, right? Instead of a collector of information and trying to figure out if it's right or not, but then instead look at the data set that an AI agent could generate and make some intelligent decisions on it.
Yep. That makes sense. And your engineering team is spread across the US or internationally as well too, right?
Just the US right now.
Gotcha. So that's got to be a good challenge to coordinate everyone, hold those teams together, back to operating as one.
It's something that I try to be more intentional about than not. I think in the days of past where you would have a central team like in a single location, very easy to go in the office, say hi to everybody, let's go knock on doors, have random conversations. So we actually put a lot of, I put a lot of emphasis on having regular meeting series. So I try to break down that barrier, that mentality that a meeting on a calendar is formal and stuffy and there has to be an agenda one. It's like, no, this is just planned hallway chat time, right? So like, let's have a quick 15 minutes as a team and just, number 1, check in to make sure everybody's live. Number 2, see if there's any issues or blockers or constraints happening. And then number 3, just shoot the breeze for a minute.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really important in today's day and age where so many people are working remotely, or you've got teams that are spread out across multiple locations, because you miss a lot of that interaction. That is important for team building, is to have those moments where the highest value thing you can do is sometimes do nothing productive, but just joke around, hear some funny stories, tell people what you're doing next weekend, all of that good stuff. Now, your team is growing, and you've said you're looking for builders, not patchers. What does a builder actually look like in the day-to-day world of operations engineering? And why is that a hard mindset to find at scale?
It's an interesting couple of terms I came up with, or chose. I didn't come up with them. These words existed before me. I think builder is like an evolution of the patcher mindset or capability set. What I mean by that is somebody who I would classify as a patcher, they're going to deal with problems as they come, right? So fire pops up, they go put it out. Fire pops up, they go put it out. Engineering assessment comes in, they do it, right? And I look at that builder as taking that to the next level of looking at the overall system or what the potential systemic gaps are that are causing those things to happen and trying to do something about it, right? Or at least showing some initiative, some ambition, be like, look, I'm dealing with the same issue in all these different arc flash studies. Like, can we not do that? I'd rather spend my time doing something else. So how do we solve this problem in the back end so it doesn't keep coming up? How do we influence to get a change in the design so that way our incident energy rating is not always 180 at the breaker, and instead maybe it's less than 40 somehow. So thinking about it from that standpoint. And I think those people, there's definitely a baseline level of ambition that an individual has to go to that place, both good and bad, right? Ambition in the sense of they want to do more than what they are currently doing now. And that talent gets snatched up for other things, right? So I'm also competing with other leadership roles out there. And I think just naturally, there's a separation of talent and quality. And so as you get higher levels of capability, the number of people get less and less. So not everybody can be a leader, I suppose. Well, what's the right word here? Not everybody can be in charge.
But everybody can be a builder to some degree. And I think that's important, taking the initiative, not just going out there, putting out the fire, but figuring out why did the fire happen in the first place and what can we do to prevent that from happening the next time. Because if you're just going out there, and I like to call it in firefighting mode, if you're just going out there putting out fires and you're not actually fixing anything, you're going to drive yourself crazy fighting the same fires over and over and over. But having that ability to pause, take a step back, look at the bigger picture, identify those consistent patterns that are presenting themselves, and then take action based on that so that hopefully it doesn't happen in the future. And if it does, at least you've got a better plan to mitigate it and reduce it.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
If anyone's listening to this and they're saying, hey, this sounds like me, this is what I want to do, Eli's got a bunch of roles posted right now online: capacity and risk team manager, critical power systems specialist, senior operations engineering program manager, and like 10 more beyond that. So if this is your calling, apply to these roles. And Eli, I hope you find some great candidates for your team here.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate that. It's been interesting having so many open at once and being able to see a whole bunch of spread of individual capabilities and experience levels kind of all at once. So yes, please apply. Please, I'll happily entertain any resume and give you a shout.
Good. We'll surface this. We'll get it visible and see if we can get you the right people. Switching gears a little bit here, and actually back to root cause analysis. We're talking about controversial perspectives here. And you had some pretty strong opinions on root cause analysis about what is and what is not, a realistic finding here.
Yeah, I think in my experience, I've seen a corrective action come across or like a root cause finding to the extent of the individual was not trained properly or did not understand the expectation, or vendor was not escorted, but all leading to the same: we're going to then train this individual, right? Or we're going to reset expectations with this individual. I think my opinion is that's a very easy button click to have something on the report that says we're going to do this, but it's not really addressing the true problem there, right? Like, if the individual was executing and they were undertrained, like that's not a training problem. To me, that's a leadership problem, right? That's not a problem with one of my guys. That's a problem with me and not doing the right thing to either set that person up for success and get them the training they need and avoid putting them in a situation where they're underqualified for the task at hand, and take the necessary steps. So yeah, that's call it a pet peeve, call it a trigger, as you will. It's like, I see that, I'm like, all right, well, okay, this is what we're doing. Now I know where to actually look. And
yeah, I completely agree with that. It's shifting the blame off of the system that you as a leader are responsible for building, and providing people with the knowledge, the training, the assets that they need to do to be successful, and building a little bit more of a tribal mentality of, oh, it's just that one person who doesn't understand it. Let me go help that one person. But really, if one person made that mistake, guaranteed other people on the team are likely to make that mistake because there isn't that same central training or procedure behind it. with these as well too, I also tend to see micromanagement coming in. And that is kind of the, hey, let me go talk to that person. If you do that over and over, that's micromanaging. And no one likes to have someone who's just watching them constantly telling, oh, you didn't do this right, you didn't do that right. It needs to go back to that original training, the original information and capabilities that they're being trained up on. But then also having that degree of decision making too. And we talked about this earlier, being able to have that flex so that they can deviate from the process when needed, and knowing when that's acceptable, when to get permission, or when absolutely not stick with the process each time. How often do you see that when something happened, maybe it was as a failing of the process, but at the end of the day, it actually worked out better than it would have if that person followed the process?
Oh, that doesn't come up too often, or at least it's not an area that's like reported on or collected somewhat regularly. I think, like, I'll have to speak a bit anecdotally here, but there's been a few instances, so not a lot, of where, like, as we're doing a review of the incident, we see that, oh, the procedure is actually written incorrectly, right? And it turned out, like, if they had followed the procedure, they would have taken down customer load. But instead, the incident was they weren't following the procedure and they accidentally single sourced customer load for like a different issue. So it's like, oh my gosh, like, okay, glad that they didn't execute this obviously incorrect procedure, but then also, why didn't they follow it, stop, realizing that it was wrong, and then raise that as an issue, right? So
yeah, because that becomes a bit of a near miss at that point.
yeah, yeah, if we want to call it a near miss. Usually when we single source customers, it's not a good day for anybody. So we've missed already. We just didn't miss as bad. We hit the backboard, but didn't completely whiff it.
Yeah. That makes sense. And then last question here for you, Eli, what does success look like for the CyrusOne operations engineering team over the next 12 to 18 months? And what has to go right during that time to get to that point of scaling?
12 to 18 months. It's so long, so far out.
Well, let's do the next 6 months then.
No, it's good. It's good.
Hiring
exercise.
the right team's probably top of the list there.
That is actually my number one. Like, in order to do anything that's on my long list of hopes and dreams, is I got to hire the right people in a timely manner, right? So I think I'm down to 7 or 8 open recs right now. I mean, that has to happen within the next 3 months to get people screened, interviewed, and onboarded so they can start being value add, right? But as far as like what success looks like over the next year and a half, I think a major milestone or a major accomplishment will be getting the disparate teams to work together in the sense of like design, construction, commissioning, operations, like all executing as one entity. So a fair number of my specific initiatives are geared around essentially aligning these teams up to where we're one CyrusOne, for lack of a better term. In order to do that, we just have to put in a lot of policies and procedures in place. I mean, I say that simply, but it's not. It's an easy task, but it's not simple. It's going to take a lot of leadership capital to make that happen because we all have different priorities, right? Like construction has to build it on time and on budget. Commissioning has to make sure the thing tests out appropriately. Operations has to keep it up at all costs. So like these are 3 competing areas directly. Then design has to make sure that whatever it is that we're building is going to meet the customer requirements. So there's all sorts of competing priorities there, and we have to somehow line up as a team and make sure we're at least talking and working together on it.
Well, it sounds like you've got a fantastic challenge coming up here. You've set that foundation. You're hiring the team, and now got to keep carrying through. So again, one last shout out to anyone who's listening to this podcast and say, "Wow, this sounds like a really fun challenge to take on with Eli and the broader team." We'll post some links to those job postings here in the show notes. You'll have access to those there. Eli, thank you very much for being on today. It's a pleasure to have you.
No, I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for taking the time to talk. It was fun.
Connect with Paul at ketkeconsulting.com or on LinkedIn. More episodes on the way. Reach out if you're ready to scale.